Hello and welcome. This is the PersonalFinanceLab.com New Futures webinar for spring of 2021. This is Kevin Smith, the Director of Product Development for Personal Finance Lab. So let's get started. As a summary, we have a lot of new stuff being added to the platform. I'm going to break this presentation down into our general improvements, so the stuff that impacts every class on Personal Finance Lab. The enhancements we're making to our stock game, which there are many. Our budget game enhancements, so if you're using our budget game, these are going to be very important to you, and we made a lot of improvements throughout. Assignments enhancements, so new and improved certificates, a new logging system that's going to impact most classes, and administration enhancements, so stuff that is going to impact you as the teacher when you're trying to do grading and other reports throughout your class. So let's get started with general improvements. So first and foremost, this spring we launched our new Personal Finance Lab dashboard. So the old dashboard was really focused on the stock game, and for students with the budget game, we took them straight to the budget game. The new version brings everything all in one place. So if we look through here, you can see the top side of the page is focusing on assignments, so putting them front and center. You know, as a student, this is what we're expecting you to do in your class. So let me see if I can pull up one of my test classes so I can show this in action. Yep, here we go. So you can see here my dashboard has my assignments at the top here. So it makes it very easy for students to see what they're supposed to do and when they're supposed to do it. Their portfolio is next. So I currently don't have anything in my portfolio for this class, so it's empty. But it's giving me some ideas of what I should be trading. For the budget game, it lists all the metrics for the budget game, where their credit score is sitting, and letting them get right into participating. The profile, so the badge system on Personal Finance Lab, it shows the most recently earned badges students have and what badge they currently have set to show on the rankings page, and a link to see all badges they can earn. If you as the teacher do not allow badges in your class, this will not be here. Word of the day is going to rotate every time the student comes to this page, and the announcements is what you as the teacher posted as announcements for your class. The students will also be able to see their most recent trades in the stock game, their most recent transactions in the budget game as well. So the whole point of this new dashboard is to make it so when students log in for the first time, they see everything relating to their account in one place. They don't need to go looking for it. Now that leads to our second point, which is onboarding. So the first thing you might see when you have this new dashboard is, oh man, there's a lot going on here. I'm not sure if my students are going to know what they need to do. And that's where our onboarding comes into play. Key pages throughout Personal Finance Lab now have what we call tours. So this will happen the first time the students log in, or the students can click again to see it whenever they need to. So the tour shows the students some information about what they're looking at. So this is your dashboard. Here's where you can get around the different site pages on the site. It shows where their portfolio is, their trading pieces, where their budget game pieces are. So just generally speaking, walking them through what they're looking at on this dashboard so they understand what's going on here. How do I do this? The entire goal of these tours is to make it so that you need to spend less class time talking about technology and more class time teaching. Especially if your school is still having students remotely, it's very easy to get frustrated with technology side of things, and we're trying to make it so more and more of that goes to our team and less of it on you. So the next thing is exactly in that same vein, live chat. So it's very frustrating as a teacher to have to try to troubleshoot every issue that every student has, which is why every page of PFIN Lab now has a live chat widget available for all students. So it's been available for teachers for some time now, but we opened it up to all students too, just to make it so that the first line of support is our team. We can take care of it. If a problem has to come up to the teacher, you know, you don't have the same kind of tools that we do, and so we're going to make it easier for you to get it solved. So every page of the site has live chat, so if a student has a problem, they can come to us first. If students come in here after market hours, then they can leave it. The widget will still be here. They can leave a message, and our support team will get back to them at the start of the next business day. Alright, so let's get into the enhancements of the stock game. So first and foremost, we launched this last fall, but it's becoming a lot more important now that we've gotten into the spring, is our weekly deposits. So historically, most stock games would have students start with some big amount of money they manage over the duration of the class. Usually $100,000 is probably the most common. But the feedback we've been getting has been that if you give students too much money to start with in the stock game, it starts to make it so the investing in the stock market doesn't become more accessible, it becomes less accessible, because they start to think, I don't have $100,000, I'm never going to have $100,000, so why would I even bother looking at this? So when you're working with a personal finance class, it often helps to hammer these concepts home and make it more tangible if you start with smaller amounts of money. $10,000, $5,000, $1,000, just something the students can really sink their teeth into. And to make the game more realistic, how it plays into the actual real world is our weekly deposits feature. So with weekly deposits, you could say my students get an extra $500 or $1,000 or $5,000 every week, basically to mimic the way it works in the real world, where you make regular contributions into your retirement account from your paycheck. So every Monday morning when your students log in, they will see their extra cash in their account, and they need to decide what they're going to do with it. New bonds, new mutual funds, continue investing in what I've already bought the first week, or how do I want to manage this money? So it goes a long way to keeping students engaged with the game in the long term and teaching them how it really works to invest in the real world. Next are custom exchanges. So custom exchanges is a way to restrict your investing universe. So instead of just having the trading page with a list of every stock they could ever trade, you can restrict it down to something specific. The most common ones that have come up so far is classes where the teacher just wants the students to trade the S&P 500 stocks or just the Dow 30 stocks. So those two were the most common white lists we saw at the beginning. But we were also working with a number of nonprofits who wanted to focus just on stocks with a strong local presence. So, 50 companies that every student in this community knows about because they have a factory nearby, a warehouse nearby, or they have shops in town. And that really plays into the buy what you know side of the investing universe. And it makes the game a lot more tangible for students because they can just pick out the companies they see. They don't need to go looking for them. They don't have to figure out what the tickers are. They just have a drop down that they can just find them in that list. The last one has come up from a couple of teachers who have been using us this spring as a test with the custom exchanges. And what they did was, at the start of the class, they had every student pick a stock that they did intense research on and thought it was a good investment. And each student would give a 5-minute presentation to class about this stock. And then for the stock game, the teacher took all of the stocks that each student presented on and put them in the whitelist. So every student had to trade those stocks. That way, they knew every student knew something about these stocks. Every student had done research on at least one of these stocks. And it encouraged students to talk with each other to figure out why they thought it was a good idea, what changed, and generally encourage them to play around with the research they've already done. You can add a whitelist or a custom exchange or remove a custom exchange from your class at any time. So you could also just start the class out saying, for the first week of the class, you can only trade the Dow 30. After a couple weeks, we'll increase this to the S&P 500. And for the last 2 weeks of class, you can trade any stock you want to. So you can play around with those as much as you like over time as well. Next up, mutual fund research. So Personal Finance has always had some mutual fund research tools. So if I go to my quotes tool here, and I want to look up the Motley Fool Mutual Fund. So I know that one is Fool X. We've always had, NAV, highs, lows, and some charts. You could look up the price history and even some analyst ratings of the mutual funds. But if you really want to talk about doing research on mutual funds, you would need a little bit more. So our new mutual fund research tool we've got 3 new tools dedicated for funds. So first, the fund overview. What are the objectives of this fund? We give a rating of how they think this fund is doing to its objectives. They can also see its performance over time. Fund performance gives it a little bit of a deeper dive into that performance, comparing this fund against its peers, along with the time horizon of what they're looking at for that kind of comparison. And perhaps the most important one is fund holdings. What is in this mutual fund? So what are they holding? How much of the fund does it take up? You can also compare this against performance or just the raw listings of what's in that fund. So easy sector research so they can see what is actually in this. So generally speaking, the whole point of this is to make it so the students can do a little bit better research on mutual funds without having to leave the Personal Finance Lab platform. And we didn't remove anything, so all of the other tools that worked for mutual funds before are still there as well. So for some classes, the other addition we have is spots trading. So spots trading doesn't come from every class. Most classes focus really just on stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. But we've also improved our spots trading pit. Now, with spots, the way it works is that students can trade currencies and commodities just as a transaction. So it's not like Forex trading where you're using margins and leverage and everything. It just says, I want my students to be able to buy a barrel of oil in their portfolio, or I want my students to be able to buy about a pound of gold. And they can do that with cash spots trading. So it just works as a cash spots transaction. It's nowhere near as complicated as futures or Forex. But if your class does talk about futures and Forex, we generally recommend to introduce them with cash spots first, so it's a little bit more tangible of what the student is actually doing. It doesn't come up in most classes, but the ones who use it will find some good appreciation for it. Speaking of finance classes, so if you have a higher level finance class at the high school level, or if you're doing corporate finance with colleges, risk-adjusted rankings are very important. So the raw return of, I've earned X dollars in my portfolio is one thing, but measuring how volatile that's been over time is very important in the finance world. So if you are teaching a finance class, we're making some improvements to our Sharpe ratio rankings, and we're also adding 2 new ranking types for risk-adjusted returns, the Jensen's alpha and the Trenner ratios. So this won't matter for most teachers because these kinds of calculations are above the heads of a typical personal finance class. But if you are working on a finance program or in the business school and you're talking about having a finance class, these will come in quite handy. Now, into the budget game. So the budget game, we've had quite a few new enhancements over the last few months and a couple that are still coming out. The first one that you'll notice immediately is visual. So the cards that a student would get in the budget game have been revamped completely. So we've changed the layout, we made it a little bit more engaging, and we have our illustrator working full-time to provide graphics that go with every single card to make it a more engaging experience, less text, more images, more fun, more engaging. So you can already see the new colors being rolled out now, and the images are going to be added to the card a few times every week. Second up, we'll have improved paychecks. So every teacher knows a student who went through the budget game and they got a really bad deal one month where their part-time job just didn't give them any hours and it made it very difficult for them to reach their budget. Or they had a student who went into they said they graduated, they started their full-time job, but they didn't get their full-time paychecks right away because they still had some part-time paychecks they were still owed. We revised both of these settings. So now as soon as a student becomes a full-time worker, they're going to get their full-time paychecks. They're not waiting for any paychecks from their last job to still come in. And students who are in part-time mode are going to get more consistent hours. It used to be you get anywhere from 5 to 35 hours, which is why students could get a really low month. Now it's going to be more, the minimum is 14 hours. So that means that students every month are going to at least be able to pay their basic bills. If not, if they didn't choose the highest settings, of course. And then the real challenge is going to be managing their other expenses and trying to make sure they have everything balanced over time, rather than making it so that if they had 2 or 3 impossible months in a row, they'd always be at the class rankings. They get a little bit discouraged. We've also improved the budget game to give historical views. So if you go into the budget game, actually, let me switch to a different account. So now in the budget game, when the students finish the game, on their finished screen, they'll have the ability to go back and change month and review the months they've completed in order to see what happened each month. So it used to be when the game finished, they can't see anything, they're kind of locked there. They would have their bank statements, of course, but they couldn't actually see what happened over time. So now the students can go back in time and see what happened. What bills did they leave unpaid and things like that as well. The other enhancement we have comes up to how teachers have been using Personal Finance Lab. So what we call zero cost bills. What we found is that a lot of teachers, when it came to the when your class is part-time students, a lot of teachers were setting some of the bills to zero. Like you wouldn't have to pay rent because you are still living at home with your parents, or your parents are still covering your cell phone bill, so that bill would just be zero. This kind of worked before, but it actually introduced some errors where there are some events in the game that might give a student a discount on a bill, in which case they'd have a negative amount due. So that will no longer be the case. You can now set any bill you want to zero and the game will properly handle it. Otherwise, we added a bunch more long-term impacts. So multi-month discounts on bills. If you happen to renegotiate your cell phone contract as one of the events that can happen on the weekend, that can actually take impact for more than 1 month at a time. You just don't get an instant rebate. The card deck of events that happens is shuffling differently depending on the kinds of events you've had in the past. When we first launched the budget game a year and a half ago, it was really just the impact you would have could impact what happened later that week. Now it really is what happens in the game is going to impact your students throughout the entire game. So decisions they make 1 month, they're going to see repercussions that come up 2 and 3 months later. Outside of the budget game, next up we have our assignment enhancements. So our assignments engine has been rebuilt from the ground up over this summer, and we've implemented, and it's been working really great for the fall and the spring. The first thing that you might notice when you create your classes is we have a new certificates engine. So a certificate is just like, it's based on the same concept as our badges, where the student would be able to earn badges depending on what they did in the throughout the budget game and stock game. But with the certificates, we give the students a list of stuff they need to accomplish in order to earn each certificate. So if I go back to my dashboard on PFIN Lab, on my class I turned on certificates, and I can see that I'm currently have a financial literacy certificate in progress. If I go to my dashboard and go to certificates, I'll see I have it here, and I have the list of lessons I need to accomplish in order to earn this. One of the requirements to earn the financial literacy certificate is completing a certain number of months in the budget game and making a certain number of actions in the stock game to show they understand all of the basic financial literacy concepts, in addition to all of the lessons we have in it as well. So the financial literacy certification has both the financial literacy certification is one. We also have a different one focused just on investing called our Investing 101 certificate. When your students complete their certificate, it'll move up here to My Certificates, and the students can download a PDF with their name when they earn their certificate and a list of the badges they earned to show the mastery of specific concepts. Also with the assignments, we have a new logging system. So in the last month or so, we had 2 or 3 schools that came to us mentioning that their students were having a hard time getting credit for their assignments. We dug into it, and it turned out that some schools had very strict firewall settings for student computers, was blocking some of the resources that we needed in order to log the assignment system. The new system that we've implemented removes this restriction. So we're rolling it out now, which is a new way in making sure that every single assignment, that progress that every single student takes, is going to be properly accounted for. This is not something you're going to see immediately, but this new logging system is going to open the door to a lot more reports in the future. So making enhancements to reports, like being able to see the individual questions students got right and wrong in the quizzes, is the stuff that we're really looking forward to in the fall. Administration. So on the admin side of PFIN Lab, the first and foremost is the new and improved widgets. So if your school has access to our data pack for widgets, now you'll find when you log into PFIN Lab, under your administration tab, you have Manage Widgets, and you can build your screens right in PFIN Lab. So if you haven't ever heard of this before, the concept behind the screens is that you can broadcast your class rankings, stock game, budget game, different types of those rankings, or words of the day, or financial news updates to a TV screen or LCD screen in your classroom. So the old system required a bunch of custom software, and it was fairly complicated to use and update. The new system, you can just create new screens whenever you want to. You just open up a browser on your screen or smart TV, and it will start broadcasting your class rankings and all the other stuff you want to show for your class. So it's simple, super simple and easy to use. Setting up can take a few minutes the first time, but once it's going forever. If you need more help setting up your widgets, I can connect you with our account managers who can walk you through the whole process. If you don't have any widgets, there is an additional data fee required to turn them on for your classroom. Next up is our Fun Facts Report. So the Fun Facts Report is a good bell ringer for your class, where it talks about who has been trading what over time. So for example, I only have one trade in my test. Oh no, I have a few trades in my test class here. If I go to my administration reports, I can click on what's called the Top Trade Securities Report. And this will tell me how many people have traded what over time. So this one, it looks like I have one trade for a future. If I go over the entire duration of my class, I get a few more different trades in here. And I can compare who's been buying, who's been selling, who's been shorting, who's been covering. So I want to see who shorted the most symbols over this time. It looks like I have no short sales, so that was not very useful. But I see some people were selling some securities. Now, for most classes, you're going to be able to see exactly what your students are doing. You'll be able to report on that as kind of a fun fact for your class, which is why we call it our Fun Facts Report. Not too relevant to actually what you'd be doing for grading, but it gives you a good picture of what your students are actually doing in the class. Also related is improved data exports. So now for our full class exports, you'll be able to pull your transaction history and your open positions reports immediately. So we recommend waiting until after 4:30 to pull these, because otherwise the portfolios have not finalized for the day yet. But you'll be able to pull them whenever you want to, instead of just only after the class has ended. This might be a problem for very large classes. So if you have 150 students or more, the new system might time out. Our support team can pull them for you from our back end at any time and get them for you, though. We're rebuilding this system and making more improvements to our reporting system over the summer as well. So it'll work in the fall for every size of class, as much data whenever you need it. Last up, Financial Literacy Month is April. To celebrate, Personal Finance Lab is holding a free financial literacy challenge. It has the stock game, the budget game enabled, and all of our lessons. Your students can earn their financial literacy certification by PFIN Lab through this. It's free for your entire school, so if you want to participate in this challenge, you don't need to, nothing you register here will count towards your school's quotas for a PFIN Lab. So let your other teachers know. The registration link, you can find it on this next page here, is content.personalfinancelab.com/financial literacy month challenge. If you just go to the pfinlab.com homepage, we have a blog here, and it will be the first item on this blog for you to share it with other teachers of your class, or you can sign up the other students who are not in the not necessarily using PFIN already. If you don't have PFIN Lab already and interested in a license, content.personalfinancelab.com/getpersonalfinancelab has all the details you need for it. And for the latest news and updates on PFIN Lab, you can check out our blog, which I just showed you how to get it from our homepage, or we have a Facebook page where we also post all of our updates. So it was a pleasure speaking with you. It looks like our time is up. If you have any questions, you can email me, kevin@personalfinancelab.com. You can get in touch with our support team. We have live chat support, both for any support issues or if you have questions about getting PFIN Lab for your school. So we're looking forward to working with you in April for Financial Literacy Month and in the fall. So have a great day.